everyone. Welcome back to the Plant-Based Asia Summit. I'm Angie, and this afternoon we are joined by a man who is revolutionizing infant nutrition. Selassie Birdie is the co-founder and director of Sprout Organic, an Australian children's nutrition company that has created the world's first organic plant-based infant formula. Okay, so some of you may be thinking, why do we need plant-based infant formula in the first place? But we'll get to that in our talk with Sel in a moment. Now, Sprout Organic has also made kids protein drinks and healthy snacks for children. And Sel's life mission is to create nourishing, wholesome plant-based nutrition for happy and healthy kids. Welcome, Sel. It's so great to have you here with us today. How's everything on the Gold Coast?
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for the warm intro. Made me sound a lot more special than I actually feel. But no, life is really good on the Gold Coast. One of the places that I think has been least affected probably anywhere in the world by all the struggles of COVID that people are experiencing. So no complaints from my end.
Oh, that's good to know. Good to hear.
Yeah.
Well, thank you again for joining us. I guess we'll just get straight into your story, Sel. We're very curious to hear about your personal story of how you and your wife, Jen, you're both the co-founders of Sprout Organic. So
yeah.
Why did you decide to go down the road of creating the world's first organic plant-based infant formula?
Sprout was effectively us trying to solve a problem for our own little family. We have 2 kids, and basically our first son was Ellis was 1 year old, and we were super lucky. Jen's had a lot of success with breastfeeding. Both our kids have been breastfed, but as a mum yourself, I'm sure you would attest to, there comes a period of time where it's just not sustainable in today's busy world, whether you're going back to work, whether it's due to just the sheer volume of milk you may have to produce, whether it's sleep factors. It could be a multiple amount of reasons, and everyone has their own rights to choose whether they're exclusively formula fed in today's modern world or whether you're able to breastfeed. Some people just don't have that success or luck. Whereas for us, at 1 year's time, we were literally at the point of going, he's starting to eat a lot more, but he's really just wanting a bottle more for comfort. And we want him to sleep peacefully. We want him to feel comfortable in making this transition. So at this stage, I was probably maybe 5 years plant-based, give or take. And like anything, I feel really fortunate and blessed to be in Australia or on the Gold Coast or in general, where plant-based eating is so easy here. It's great. The produce is great. The food is great. Absolutely no complaints about it. It's very, very simple for us to do. So I think I naturally thought it would be just an easy process for my son at that stage to do the exact same things. He just started eating foods. He was eating fruits and vegetables and legumes and all the stuff that you start eating when you just start your transitional feeding process. But we just wanted him to have a bottle or 2 during the day to top that up, and he was still craving it. So I went down to the pharmacy, went down to the supermarket, went to the health food store in my naivety, just saying, I'll just pick up some plant-based milk, no different to, I guess, how any of us will go get some rice milk or soy milk or coconut milk or almond milk, or every plant-based alternative milk is currently available. I just thought, how could someone not have already thought about this for kids? It'd be the first thing I would think about. If being the person that I am. And when I went there and realized there actually wasn't one anywhere on the shelf, I thought, this is really strange, but there must be something online, because it couldn't be possible that around the world nothing had been done. So I went online, and all I found was a couple of soy formulas, which nothing on towards soy, but at the same time, the source of soy wasn't organic. Its origin wasn't clear. There was a lot of things. And on top of that, even the soy formulas were containing, I know this is going to be something we'll discuss later, but lots of fish oils, lots of things. And I was like, levels of mercury. And if you're not about consuming anything from animal, that was another problem in itself. So, but I literally sat down and said, I can't feed him anything. as a milk option or a formula option, I said, well, what should I do? And my natural instinct, probably from my background in nutrition, was to go, I'll make him something myself. And I have the know-how and the ability to provide him a wholesome drink that he'll enjoy, I hope, and provide him all the nutrition that would be there. So no different to what's on those cans, literally in there now. I said, I'll get this ingredient, and this ingredient, put it together and give it to him. And he really liked it. And I knew that it covered all the whole vitamins and mineral specs that he needed for growth and development.
For those who may not know, who are watching, what are some of the symptoms of a dairy intolerance in babies and young children? Did you experience any of this as well?
In all honesty, I can say very fortunately that my kids aren't actually intolerant to anything, and they have had dairy before, unknowing to me. But let's face it, it's in lots of different things, and we're trying to be our very best with everything. But there's slip ups, and we found through testing and everything, no issues with dairy. What for me was the most important thing was just the aspect of what is the human body naturally, what does it agree with? So intolerances come in all different types of forms, as you kind of alluded to. It can be through skin, it can be through fatigue, it can be through brain fog, it can be through actual physical symptoms, gastric symptoms, diarrhea. There are so many things that sometimes are very visible to people as us as humans, and other times not visible. But one thing I do know is that from an in-sync purpose of evolution, it's not something we were designed to consume. Some people can consume it better than others. My whole thing is, if something wasn't readily made for us to consume, why should I consume it? It's not going to help my children. So as a parent, I just want to try and do as best as I can for my kids. So for me personally, I'm not speaking for everyone, I felt it made sense for them not to consume dairy and to consume something that I felt I could give them that would have equal or better nutrition without something that I felt wasn't going to agree with them ecologically. And it could be through a whole lot of symptoms that may not be physically seen.
It's interesting that you mentioned something like brain fog. I mean, that's something that I think would be very difficult to detect as a parent in a child.
It would. And that's probably the hardest thing that I've found with it was, yes, they physically may seem okay, but like you said, how is you detect that? They may be sleeping more than they usually would be. Maybe they're a bit lethargic and don't have the same amount of energy as they otherwise would. And there's so many kids that are so different that my whole process was, I don't know what it could do. I know from a physiological aspect, these are the things that it could do. So I would just prefer not to in my circumstance, where I felt I could give them a head start without having to obviously feed them something that could create some symptoms that may not be the best for them.
So let's talk about how milk is actually produced. What actually has to happen to a cow in order for her to produce milk? And how is this unnatural in the dairy industry?
We're all animals at the end of the day, whichever way you look at it. And though different to a female now that's a human, she gets pregnant, she has a child, she produces milk, she feeds that milk to her child until that child is of a certain age, and then she stops producing milk because the body understands that this is now at its end cycle, and that's the journey that it goes on. A cow is no different. A cow is impregnated. She will have a young calf. She'll then produce milk, and then her young calf will consume the milk. What people often fail to understand is once the young calf, no different to a kid, is of a certain age, then the cow actually stops producing milk. I think people have this shiny ideological view that the cow just keeps producing milk till the day it dies. It's naturally supposed to stop producing milk like every animal in the world. What is unnatural is now we as humans inject the cow with sperm, hormones, antibiotics, basically to trick the cow's evolution system to think it's still pregnant. So the cow remains thinking for its life or journey that it still has a young calf that it's feeding all the time, or a young calf that it's about to give birth to. Imagine that happening to a human. Imagine us, yourself, any female going, well, now I've given birth to my child, but I'm being probed or injected or being pushed towards having more kids, but I'm not actually having more kids. It's just being done so I can keep being milked. And you can only imagine this type of stuff that you will be giving to a cow of that size to keep producing milk at the rate that we're trying to make the cow produce the milk. Don't even need to go into the details of what's being injected in there, but clearly that's not a natural thing. And what comes from the cow, therefore, is clearly unnatural as well. And I know back in the day, people probably still have this picture in their heads from when they were a young kid, and there's a cow in the pasture, and it's one cow, and there's a farmer manually pulling on its teats and producing milk. That's not what occurs. Like it doesn't. I can assure you right now, that's not actually what occurs. I'm not saying that way means that you should consume dairy milk, but I actually can say back then it wasn't like it is now. Now it's a whole nother level of toxicity and hormones and antibiotics used to keep that cow producing milk literally for as long as possible until it can't go any longer, which clearly isn't something that I'm too keen on, and nor should I think anyone really be keen on.
Yeah, that's it's pretty horrific when you think about it. And I guess the important thing to note there is that the hormones, the antibiotics, and all those things that go into the cow go through the milk, and people drink it.
Yeah. And it's always when you tell people it's no different, like you just need to think of the animals no different to you think of yourself, that when they say to mums, don't drink when you're breastfeeding because the alcohol will pass through to your child, or don't take any type of narcotic or toxic substance. They even say don't have coffee. Why? Because the caffeine will just pass straight through to your baby. It's no different to a cow.
That's a good analogy there, Sel. So let's get back to Sprout Organic. Your background is in nutrition. So can you talk to us about the nutritional formulation of Sprout Organic's infant formula? So you say they're clean and gentle. So why did you choose such ingredients like organic rice and organic pea protein? And how does this differ to dairy-based formula?
Everyone was used to a dairy formula. My whole goal with it was to say, here is an alternative if you choose to have it that is equal to what is on the shelf right now. We just happen to be organic and plant-based and free from common allergens. The way that I looked at it was I needed to find ingredients that didn't fit any of the common allergens. And the common allergens, for those that aren't aware, are dairy, soy, gluten, nuts, wheat, fish. The list goes on. So that automatically removed quite a lot of ingredients, as you would have just heard from the ones I could do work with. What I therefore started looking forward to were what were ingredients that, regardless of race or genetic dispotype, would be suitable. Rice is very well tolerated by 99.9% of the population because it's been readily grown in agriculture around the world since the dawn of time, effectively. So that was my go-to ingredient because I was like, we can get a great protein source from it. We can get a great carbohydrate source from it. Those two things are obviously extremely important in what we're doing with this. Then the pea protein came from the aspect of pea also has been grown for a very long time and has been shown to be really well tolerated in humans. So that would create a complete protein profile of what I was after with the addition of pea. My concerns around it, similar to what you were saying, being gentle, I needed something that wouldn't cause gastric upset, would be easily consumed and digested by babies. And for a long period of time, and people are also catching up with this, fermenting and soaking things is the easiest way to make something more bioavailable. So we soaked and fermented our rice, and then we soaked and fermented our pea protein to ensure that it was super well digested by kids. It reduced the ability of having to make their small stomachs have extra work to break down things, because a lot of the breakdown process was already occurred in the fermentation, making it more bioavailable for kids to consume. Once doing that, that can basically comprise a lot of my proteins and carbohydrates that I needed. The final component was getting fats, essential fatty acids into the baby, which I know we'll go into DHEA a bit later, but the fats that I chose were coconut, predominantly, because again, something that has been really well tolerated for the longest period of time, which made it very easy to get a good fatty acid profile into their system. So that comprised the bulk of it. And then from there, it was just ensuring that I could get all the vitamins and minerals and micronutrients like DHEA, calcium, iron, phosphorus, all those things that are required from a plant-based source. So I literally went down the list of every single vitamin and mineral the child needed, and literally just went to the food source of where it comes from. So obviously vitamin C is very rich in a lot of fruits. So we use a lot of fortified fruit powders to get our vitamin C profile. Calcium comes from a lot of leafy greens, when got those sources and fortified it to make our calcium source, and so forth. So that was pretty much the design of how it came about. And then, the last lot of stuff was obviously overcoming any regulatory issues, ensuring that it met spec, put it through all the testing processes, and then making sure all our ingredients that I picked could be found organic, which was quite a hard process, but we got there in the end of finding all of those. Yeah.
And you mentioned DHA. So you use, I hope I can pronounce this properly. It's called docosahexaenoic acid, which is that's DHA from algae.
Correct.
So
yeah.
DHA is important for brain development, but most people think it actually comes from fish, when actually fish are just the middlemen, because fish eat algae. So let's talk about how DHA from algae, is it superior to DHA from fish?
I'm sure the science will catch up eventually, which will show that the bioavailability from the algae is superior, because it's just no different to, like you said, if the fish is acting as a middleman to provide the algae, the concentration from the DHA from the algae directly is higher. So that goes scientifically kind of how I would expect it to go. The hard thing is the innovation and technology is so new to the space that, yes, they've shown the bioavailability is more within humans and everything like that, but testing and studying a baby over X amount of time takes time, and for those results to be published. But I always say it is no different that if you can get your source of whatever the nutrient you're looking for directly from that source, why would you go through an extra additional step to receive it? Because it's only going to become weaker in concentration.
Such a good point, Sal. And I want to ask how your experience has been, because you guys are literally disrupting 120 plus year old industry that's been dominated by dairy. So do you expect to experience any backlash from big dairy, or have you already perhaps? And how do you plan to conquer this space?
I believe with the right team and the right passion and the right personnel, you can achieve anything. When starting to go down this track and first trying to make the product commercial, when I was telling people about it, a meeting with some of the best minds in the space and everything, and then basically just slamming the door in my face or saying no, I started asking myself, like, questioning, was it something I was doing from a regulatory point of view, a legal point of view, or science point of view that didn't add up? Because you naturally go, why wouldn't people want to see better? We've proven it across all these other fields, be it new age meats, plant-based alternative meats, and plant-based milks, and all these different things. And I was like, everyone's so accepting of all these other things. Why is it all of a sudden what I'm presenting is being seen as such this negative, in this negative light? And then kept looking at it further, and like you said, I started looking at the people that were in dairy, and it had remained almost like the last frontier of products per se within the dairy industry that hadn't been touched. No one had, plant-based milks had come along and really disrupted everything they'd done in that space. And then plant-based meats had done their stuff, and even plant-based cheeses and plant-based yogurts and you name it. But it seemed to be like the last thing that they had, that they had almost said, no one will come here and will ensure via food regulations, food councils, health regulations, doctors, dietitians, pyramids, food pyramids, and all these different types of things, that no one will question why dairy is best for infants. And if they do question it, we'll almost ensure there's so many safety guards and rails to prevent someone actually commercially being able to do something about it. I'm sure other people had tried, and when they got hit with those regulations and councils and fees and agreements and all these different types of things they weren't expecting, and realizing, wow, this is actually going to cost hundreds of thousands of dollars to get to this endpoint. I don't have the ability to keep going. They probably stopped at that point. All it did was just spur me further along. And I'm no different to what those people were. I just think I've maybe had a bit more resilience in the space. And when I saw how much it was going to cost, then I said, I need partners to do this, which is where I've been very fortunate enough to have some awesome business partners that saw and believed in my vision and backed that and helped financially to get to that next stage. And that's really where I think the difference was, that we weren't going to give up in the process. And so that comes with a lot of stuff. That comes with lobbying governments. That comes with changing health regulations and codes that have been existing for 150 years. It comes with being told no by a lot of big supermarket channels and places that have vested interest in keeping the status quo, which obviously hurts sales. That comes with a lot of not being allowed to get your marketing message out there. But at the same time, if you believe in it strongly enough, I also think the right people will come along and support you on your journey, and you'll eventually, hopefully, arrive at the destination that you set out to at the start.
So I would like to ask a few questions about nutrition in young children.
Yeah.
So the first one is, how much plant protein do babies and young children actually need? And can you share some great foods that provide this protein?
The thing that I also say all the time is, as a parent or as an adult, use yourself as a first reference point. Most adults would literally, when they ask, how much protein do you need? They'll say it's anywhere between 0.8 to 1 gram per body weight per day. And the people very rarely argue that, unless you're like a heavy bodybuilder or something or a very physical, robust person. You very rarely require more than that. So then I say, if you apply that same logic just to your kids that just happen to be smaller versions of yourself, but they still have brain functioning, muscle development, all those other types of things. How much does your child weigh? And depends on the age, obviously, from there. But a baby will be born anywhere around 3 to 4 kilos is the kind of average. And then by the time they hit, give or take, let's say 2 to 3, they can fall anywhere between 10 to 15 kilos. And when I say to a parent, well, if you use the same logic, but a little less reduction because their gastric system isn't quite at that level yet, you'll actually find out for, let's call it a 10-kilo baby or toddler, that you're working off that rule of 0.8, you're actually sitting around 8 to 10 grams of protein per serving. And they're like, no, that's nowhere near enough. But then when you express the logic of, so why is it enough for you as an adult, but why isn't it enough for them as a kid? They actually have no answer. It's simply because that something's been imprinted in their head of going, oh, I need 100 grams of protein and all these different types of stuff. But you could also be a 100-kilo person and you're trying to take that process and put it to the child. So I think that's also really important to know, that often there is a lot of stuff that they may be getting far too much protein because they're being forced to feed a lot more because of the logic that's being imparted onto them via society or the likes of that type of stuff. So that's why if a child is eating a whole food diet, a plate full of lots of veggies, lots of fruits, lots of greens, lots of color on that plate, they're getting most likely all the protein that they will need. If there's times where they're not able to feed properly, that's obviously when products like ours can come into play to help prop that up. But generally speaking, a great full plate of veggies, legumes, fruits will provide them the protein they need. They don't need to have additional meat or XYZ to get their protein. So I think that's really important to know. The second part of your question, in terms of what are some great protein options, leads to the fact of all the things that I was mentioning before already contain protein. I think people forget that your nuts and seeds and leafy greens and all those type of things already contain protein. If they're missing out on that, sure, their protein may be a bit less, but there's the simplest way to get it per gram comes in the smallest ways. Things like chickpeas and lentils, nuts, seeds, leafy greens. Just one serving of those per day for a child will get them right up to where they need to be. And it's often the easiest way for them to consume it because they're very easy to consume in terms of their portion size compared to if they were having to have a large portion of meat to make up the same amount. So they look at it on their plate and go, it can be very small, but provide them what they need. And I know you as a parent, feeding time is often the hardest. So the smaller the meal size, but the more bang you get for your buck, it's often easier to get them to consume it in one hit compared to a huge plate of all this stuff, and they'll pick at it, but they won't have all of it. So I find it actually quite a lot easier to get those type of nutrients into them.
What I like to do is smoothies. So like,
exactly.
I'm sure you definitely know, like days where the broccoli isn't going down so well, or, then the smoothies, they do the job. You just whack everything in, get your leafy greens in, and you know that they're getting it.
Yeah, that was actually my second problem that I was having with the kids, because as much as we want to live in this perfect world scenario, they were so good at eating between the ages of like 1 to 2, and then they become fussy just because they're kids. We understand it. And then the junior protein was where I was like, I wish I could have one product that not only covered the additional protein that they may miss every now and then, but had all the veggies and fruit powders that I want to feed them in the protein. So we developed that. So it covered everything in one to make life easy for those days that can't quite, things just don't go to plan.
So what about iron? So how do we ensure that our kids are getting enough iron? So what are some of the important sources And also
Yeah.
the important thing is, how do we ensure proper absorption?
I find, like, when you make things really specific for people, they often go, well, they don't like that particular food. So that means they're not going to get their iron intake. But I assure people that if you put down all the leafy greens that you can find in this world, whichever ones they may be, you'll notice that your kid will naturally gravitate towards something out of those. So it can be Swiss collard, it can be spinach, it can be broccoli, it can be bok choy, it can be kale, it can be so many different things that are great, readily available sources of iron. As you said, if they don't want to eat it whole, then the next best thing is blend it in a smoothie. And they're easy to mask. Add some banana to it, blend it with some nice milk. And for what it's worth, if ours already has it within some of our products with kale and all that different type of stuff, but that's often the second easiest way to get in there. Sometimes you get lucky. Some kids love, my kids are fortunate, they love kale. They love it crispy, be it oven baked. So I'm fortunate there, but not everyone's the same. So that's a great way to get it. And then other ways is also chuck some nuts with it, be it Brazil nuts, be it things like that you can also blend up as well. And you can bake, you can roast, you can, if you soak them, they're very, very easy to add into other food types as well. So that's usually my recommendation with that side of things when it comes to that. And calcium follows a very similar path. The leafy greens and foods like that, and tofus and lots of that type of stuff are already rich in those foods that it just is a matter of having a plate that's full of those colors that allows you to get that intake.
Yeah, I was going to talk about calcium as well. Ask you a little bit about calcium, because I think a lot of people, especially with milk, the concern is, look, I'm going to switch from a dairy, maybe just to milk or a toddler drink, or maybe a formula to a plant-based one, but they're concerned about calcium. So what would you say to a parent who's concerned about that?
I don't doubt that the milk or dairy milk contains calcium. There's not an argument around that. Its bioavailability and its absorption can be argued, because calcium naturally needs vitamin D and other things for their best bioavailable source. What I will say is, if you're switching milks and you were consuming dairy before and you want to get them onto an oat milk, a soy milk, and I'm just talking common milks here because all our products are fortified with calcium. So you don't have to worry about that with formula. That's legally just by letter of the law. So you're not missing out on calcium taking our products. But if you're talking about common milks and the likes of that type of stuff, just look for plant-based milks that have been fortified with calcium, because they're readily available in a wider range of sources of different brands that I think are doing great things, that do it unsweetened. And that's the simplest way to get your calcium intake from milk. Like I said, you don't even have to be concerned about it if you're taking a plant-based formula like ours, because we've fortified it with the calcium and iron that a baby needs. But just for general purposes, I always say try to look for something that's got that fortification in it as well.
We're going to our final question here. This one is about you more personally, your story of how you became plant-based. So could you tell us what the story was and how has it made a difference to you and your family's lives?
I was actually a professional athlete playing rugby league before, and during that time period of playing rugby league as well, I was a product development manager for a lot of sports nutrition brands. And I feel that I probably had a background in always being very curious about what foods could help performance. That was where I was approaching it from. So I know a lot of people that are plant-based or vegan or that lifestyle come to it from the ethical standpoint, which I really admire. I never lie or tell anyone that I came to it from that place, first and foremost. That was the bonus when I found out more about that. The way I found out more about it was literally looking at the aspect of, as a rugby league player, you're expected to be super strong, super big, do all these different performance aspects. I was coming to the back end of my career and going, when I eat meat, I feel instantly tired. Like, and anyone that has eaten meat, I know some people may have not, but the majority of the population has. I don't think anyone can say, wow, I ate a big steak and I'm bouncing around with energy. Or I ate this whole lot of meat and I feel super energetic and ready to exercise and thrive. So I was like, if food is supposed to be the source of what's giving me energy, why am I feeling tired when I consume this food? That was literally just my brain trying to put two and two together. And then it just came down to, well, now I look at the science behind this is because processing this meat that I've eaten is taking up X amount of energy because it's very hard to process, which is creating me to be tired, lethargic, and feel a bit flat. And then I said, what if I didn't eat this meat and I ate another source that didn't make me tired, but gave me some energy? And that was literally the first thing I looked at it. And then I said, so what would be the sources of foods that I would eat that would give me energy? And then I was like, well, fats is the best source of energy. What foods give me good fat sources? And it was nuts and seeds. And then I was like, cool, that covers that. Carbohydrates was very easy because I was just like, the carbohydrates are coming from plants anyway. Rice, sweet potatoes, the likes of that type of stuff, vegetables and everything like that. So I was like, cool. So the only thing that I'm missing is protein, but the protein I'm consuming right now is making me really tired. What if I subbed out those proteins for proteins that may give me some energy? And that was literally it. And then I tried it and went, wow, I can have this food and I can go and exercise straight away and not feel sick or tired or anything like that. So then I did that for a month and went, feel pretty good. Then that led to 3 months, 6 months. And then before long, I was like, I don't actually need the meat that I thought I needed. And then, like I said, all the additional benefits that I started finding out about what was going on, be it environmental, ethical, just was the cherry on top of the health benefits that I started to feel. And then I started getting into my business life and career, and it's not a good thing. I don't promote it, but started having to get a real lack of sleep because my work level was so high that late nights, early mornings, kids. So that was another thing where I was like, I can't feel lethargic or tired at any stage. I'm going to get a minimal amount of sleep. I need to perform at my best off this. And I felt fine, believe it or not, working off 5 hours of sleep when I changed to this diet. And then that also combined with the additional foods that I started adding, be it nootropic mushrooms, obviously plant-based, CBD oils, plant-based. I was like, there's all these different great additional supplements that I can add that make me feel good, that are all coming from plant-based sources. This holistically is starting to make a lot of sense. And then I just kept doing it. And yeah, then it led me to obviously down the pathway of going, so working for adults and promoting such goodness. When are we going to start looking after our kids in a similar manner? And hence the journey in a full 360 back around.
Wow, well, Sel, thank you. Thank you so much for answering our questions, taking the time to share your story, and really interesting to understand more about nutrition, especially for children. And I'm sure this would have been a very, very interesting interview for a lot of parents out there. So thank you.
Yeah, cool.
Thank you so much for taking the time.
Thanks for having us. Hope to chat again soon. And hopefully everyone around the world is doing okay through this time.